Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us here on the program where we cover the most interesting live trials and legal stories in the news today. Bunch of things to cover, so let's get started right now. Okay, let's go there. Let's break all this down so far as we wait to go live. So joining me right now on set, not even via Skype, but on set, is criminal defense attorney Lakai Vinson. Lakai, great to see you.
Good morning, Jesse.
Okay, so let's talk about where we're at right now, right? So what we do know is that there is a baby that died. We don't even have a precise cause of death. It hasn't even been firmly established that this was a killing. It could have very well been a stillborn. What we do know, and both sides are conceding the fact that she buried the baby. But the problem is I'm curious, what is the jury thinking at this point? Because if we have those facts, at one hand you could say, clearly she's responsible. What else could have happened? The baby seemed to be healthy. But on the other hand, we just saw this police interrogation tape. She's crying. She calls her mother mommy. She's a teenager being interviewed by the police. You could see how somebody in her position who was panicked about being pregnant might have kept this a secret and how this might have happened. Now, her mother did say to her, what you did is not normal. Normal people wouldn't have done what you did. That's why the police are investigating. So what do you think the jury's thinking at this point?
So Jesse, I think it's really important that the jury consists of mothers. Any mother that sees this interrogation of this little girl is going to be sympathetic, especially when they hear her call her mother mommy. So I think that that is totally relatable. I think that the jury is going to have a hard time when it comes to this child, even though there's the potential out there that she did wrong, that she may have done something to her unborn or her born child, but not knowing what the status of that child was when they were born. But I think it's going to be hard for any jury member to look at her and not see a baby. So I think at this point, they're seeing a baby having a baby.
What's interesting is that this case, since we don't have that precise forensic analysis here, there's no even extreme evidence showing that there was a burning. We don't know what the cause of death is. It's so much based upon what was she saying, what was she doing before the pregnancy and ultimately after the pregnancy. And I wonder, can you have a case that's built strictly on that? And you might say, well, this is a girl, clearly she never wanted this baby, she never told anybody, she didn't take care of herself, she wasn't getting the things that you need to do to prepare to have a baby. And then, you know, just miraculously for her, the baby's a stillborn. It's not an impossibility, but what is your take on that?
I think that the criminal defense attorney will have to argue about the fact that just because you don't like her doesn't necessarily mean that she killed her baby. She may have been irresponsible, she may not have been happy about having a baby, but what teenager would be under these circumstances? But that's not enough to find that she's guilty of murder.
We've heard a lot from her police interrogation tape, and believe it or not, we are going to hear her second police interrogation tape this morning. That's what's planned, where again, she's ultimately arrested. Here's the thing. Is there an advantage, and I think I know your answer, is there an advantage for her to take the stand and explain what she was talking about in these interviews? I mean, she will be subject to cross-examination, but is there an advantage in this particular case?
As a criminal defense attorney, I try and avoid putting my client on the stand unless it's absolutely necessary. I don't think that this is one of the cases where it's absolutely necessary because we're talking about a child. She's not going to be able to weave through those questions that the prosecutor's likely going to be able to ask, will likely ask her. And so I think that she will hurt herself more than help herself if they put her on the stand.
I just would love to know what the jury's thinking right now about the interrogation tape that's been played and what's going to be happening now in court. Okay, so I'm curious about your view here on the strategy, because we knew that this tape was coming, and yet the defense was very keen on Friday, in anticipation of this video being seen, to point out to this jury, you know, when you're going to hear later on that she admits in this interrogation tape that she tried to cremate the baby, that she tried to burn the baby. Well, where did that come from? And the interesting part about this is that what we know throughout this case is that the forensic anthropologist, Dr. Beth Murray, first said that she felt that the bones were charred, but then later recanted that and said perhaps there was a mistake. And so they use that almost to try to say that this is a murder. And I'm curious your thought, the defense here, to say, let's put this idea in the jury's mind and say, anything that you're about to hear from Skylar Richardson, as big of an impact as it could have been, we'll try to show you it's not as big of an impact because that's not even supported by the evidence. So I'm curious what you think about that.
So I think what will happen is they'll cancel out whatever this expert says, because the expert's credibility is lost by way of going back and forth. So I think that the defense should absolutely say, and which they did say, hey, you're going to hear this evidence, but it's inconsistent. And when you have an inconsistent expert, anything that they say is canceled out.
And so it would have been a different kind of situation if we heard that testimony after the police interview, what we're seeing here, than before, because now we kind of know what to expect. This could have been a bombshell for the prosecution, but the defense kind of undercut it a little bit.
And that's what they should do. They want to make sure that they get in front of any potential evidence that's coming out, so they can sort of minimize it before it gets there, or if it's a big deal, maximize it so that the jury can be aware of it and look out for it when it comes through testimony.
Are you surprised again that she's by herself with the detectives in light of what we saw? Her first interview, again, she's questioned without the presence of an attorney. Then her parents come in, and yet the same thing's happening here.
Absolutely. I mean, any parent you would believe would be right there with their child whenever they're being interrogated by the police. So I'm always surprised to see that.
Well, let's hear what the defendant has to say. This might be the only time that the jury actually hears the words from the defendant, unless she decides to take the stand. So let's go live. Okay, gives us a good opportunity to talk right now. Lakai, what have you been seeing here? Has there anything that's been alarming? Remember, they're trying to press her with evidence that we know at this point is not entirely accurate. But based upon every way that they're trying to get this confession, holding her hands. At one point they said, we're not trying to put words in your mouth, but are they? What's your impression?
I think that, unfortunately, the officers are doing a very good job walking them through the evidence that they know of up until this point. And I think at some point she agrees with them. She's not necessarily definitive on where she stands on everything, but at some point she agrees with them, gives them a little bit more, and then they continue the questioning as she continues to give them more. So no, not at this point. I don't think anything's alarming.
As I'm listening to this, I'm wondering if there's a gray area. You know, the baby maybe was born alive, but let's not forget, she gave birth to this baby by herself, an 18-year-old with no medical training giving birth to a baby. And if there's a situation where the baby died as a result of mishandling. Now, I want to show something, all the charges that she's faced with, because originally she was charged with reckless homicide. And based upon this analysis, we got aggravated murder, involuntary manslaughter, endangering children, tampering with evidence, abuse of a corpse. If you have a situation where an 18-year-old girl gave birth to this baby by herself, and she didn't intend to kill this baby, but as a result of, again, just having the baby on her own, the baby dies, can she be convicted of anything that you see there as anything illegal?
I think that there's certainly a question as to whether or not she did anything illegal, even if it wasn't intentional. So we can talk about voluntary and involuntary manslaughter. Voluntary manslaughter is dealing with the situation where she's so emotional, she doesn't know what to do, and as a result, she kills the baby. And involuntary manslaughter is what you were talking about. It's not necessarily intentional, but some mishandling occurred, and as a result, the baby dies. So I think that she could certainly be convicted of either one of those. I think that the prosecution is going to have to bring out the fact that she was so passionate, so emotional, that she acted out of some sort of upset or rage in considering voluntary manslaughter.
I think at the very least, she probably will be convicted of abuse of a corpse. That's pretty straightforward, and that's, again, a punishment of up to 6 to 12 months in prison. Let's go back live, and we'll hear more of this interview. All right, as they go to a break, let's take a break on our end. When we come back, we're going to break down everything that just happened. Stay tuned.